"I'm offering you $1 million for your farm, Mr. Hayes," the elegant woman said, her eyes reflecting the same determination that had made her a legend in the horse-breeding world. Daniel Hayes stared at her in disbelief, his calloused hands gripping the kitchen table for support. Just 3 weeks ago, she had been nothing more than a stranded traveler seeking shelter in his dilapidated barn. Now she was offering to transform his failing family legacy into something greater than he could have ever imagined. As Daniel gazed out the window at his drought-stricken fields and the old barn where his last remaining horse stood, he faced the most important decision of his life. Would he hold on to the failing farm that had been in his family for generations, or would he partner with this fascinating stranger who seemed to see potential where he only saw despair? Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun crept gradually over the eastern horizon, casting long shadows across Daniel Hayes' drought-parched fields. At 42, his weathered face told the story of a man who had battled the elements for too long. The last 3 years of relentless drought had broken many farmers in the region, and Daniel was barely holding on. His once thriving horse farm had dwindled to a single aging mare and fields that refused to yield enough to sustain a proper operation. Daniel rose before dawn, as he had every day since inheriting the farm from his father 15 years ago. He splashed cold water on his face from the basin in his modest farmhouse bathroom, the pipes groaning in protest. The house itself, like everything else on the property, needed repairs he couldn't afford. The kitchen faucet had been leaking for months, the roof needed patching, and the porch stairs creaked dangerously under even the lightest footstep. After a simple breakfast of toast and black coffee, Daniel pulled on his worn work boots and headed out to tend to his remaining mare, Willow. The old barn, once home to 12 prized quarter horses, now echoed with emptiness as his boots scuffed against the concrete floor. Willow nickered softly in greeting as he approached her stall. "Morning, old girl," Daniel murmured, running a gentle hand down her chestnut neck. "Just you and me again today." Willow had been his father's favorite, and Daniel couldn't bring himself to sell her, even when the feed bills mounted and the bank statements arrived in increasingly urgent red envelopes. She was the last connection to the farm's better days, when Hayes quarter horses had been known throughout the county for quality stock. As he forked fresh hay into Willow's stall, Daniel mentally calculated his dwindling finances. The property tax bill was coming due, and the small savings account he'd maintained was nearly depleted. His part-time job at the hardware store in town helped, but it wasn't enough. Something would have to give soon. After finishing the morning chores, Daniel climbed into his aging pickup truck and headed down the long gravel driveway toward town. The truck's engine protested, adding another worry to his growing list. Replacing it would be impossible right now. The small agricultural community of Cedar Ridge had seen better days too. Main Street featured more empty storefronts than open businesses, a reflection of the economic struggles the prolonged drought had brought to the region. Daniel nodded to a few familiar faces as he parked in front of Guthrie's Hardware, where he worked 3 days a week. "Morning, Joe," he called to the owner as he entered the store, the bell above the door announcing his arrival. Joe Guthrie, a man in his 60s, with a perpetual smile despite his own business struggles, waved from behind the counter. "Daniel, just in time. Got a delivery coming in an hour. Mind helping unload when it gets here?" "No problem," Daniel replied, donning the store's red apron. He appreciated the work, even if it wasn't what he'd imagined for himself. His father would have been disappointed to see a Hayes working for someone else instead of building the family legacy. But times had changed. The morning passed with the usual routine of helping customers, restocking shelves, and assisting with household repairs that locals couldn't manage themselves. Daniel had a knack for fixing things, a talent that had kept his own farm functioning despite its deteriorating condition. During his lunch break, Daniel sat on the bench outside the hardware store, unwrapping the sandwich he'd prepared that morning. The October air carried a hint of the coming winter, and dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain that the parched land desperately needed, but that would likely bypass them again, as it had so many times before. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and Daniel checked the screen with a sense of dread. It was the bank again. He silenced the call, knowing he was only delaying the inevitable. The farm was 3 months behind on its mortgage payments, and the bank's patience was wearing thin. By late afternoon, as Daniel prepared to close the store, the sky had darkened considerably, and the wind had picked up, bending the trees along Main Street. The promised storm was finally arriving, and it looked more serious than the forecast had predicted. "You might want to head home early," Joe suggested, glancing worriedly at the sky through the store window. "That looks like it could get nasty." Daniel nodded, grateful for his employer's understanding. "Thanks, Joe. I'll open tomorrow to make up for it. Don't worry about it. Just get home safe." The drive back to the farm was tense, with wind buffeting the truck and the first heavy raindrops beginning to fall. By the time Daniel turned onto his property, the storm had intensified into a full-blown downpour, complete with lightning that illuminated the darkened landscape in brief, blinding flashes. His first concern was for Willow. Daniel parked hastily and ran to the barn, rain soaking through his jacket within seconds. The old building groaned under the assault of the wind, but it had weathered worse storms over its 100-year existence. Inside, Willow was agitated, rolling her eyes and pacing her stall. Daniel spoke soothingly to her as he checked that the roof wasn't leaking too badly. A few drops came through in the usual spots, but nothing serious enough to worry about. "It's all right, girl. Just a storm. It'll pass." As he reassured the mare, Daniel heard an unexpected sound over the rain pounding on the roof, the rumble of an engine approaching. Curious and slightly concerned, he moved to the barn door and peered out into the storm. Headlights cut through the curtain of rain, illuminating a sleek black SUV that was decidedly out of place on his rural property. The vehicle pulled up near the barn and stopped, its wipers working furiously against the downpour. Daniel stepped out, shielding his eyes against the rain as the driver's door opened. A slim figure emerged, immediately assaulted by the wind and rain. The visitor was a woman, he realized, as she struggled with what appeared to be a large duffel bag from the back seat. Without thinking, Daniel rushed forward to help. "Hey, get inside!" he shouted over the storm, gesturing toward the barn. The woman looked up, seemingly startled by his appearance, but quickly nodded and followed him, clutching her bag. Once inside the relative shelter of the barn, they both stood dripping on the concrete floor, catching their breath. In the dim light, Daniel could see his unexpected visitor more clearly. She appeared to be in her late 30s, with shoulder-length dark hair, now plastered to her head from the rain. She wore expensive-looking riding boots, jeans, and a soaked leather jacket. Despite her bedraggled appearance, there was something immediately striking about her, a confidence in her posture and a sharpness in her dark eyes as they assessed the barn. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't immediately place. "I was trying to outrun the storm, but it caught me. My GPS said the nearest hotel is 20 miles away, and in this weather—" She gestured to the raging storm outside. "You picked a bad day for a drive in the country," Daniel replied, running a hand through his wet hair. "I'm Daniel Hayes. This is my farm." "Alexandra Belmont," she responded, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, her hands surprisingly calloused for someone who drove such an expensive vehicle. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Hayes. I was on my way to view a property in the next county when the storm warning started. I thought I could make it to town before it hit." Daniel nodded, noticing that she was shivering slightly in her wet clothes. "Look, the house isn't far. You can dry off there and wait out the worst of it." Alexandra glanced around the barn, her eyes lingering on Willow, who watched them curiously from her stall. "That's very kind, but I don't want to impose. Perhaps I could just wait here until the rain lets up a bit?" Before Daniel could respond, a tremendous crash of thunder shook the barn, and both of them jumped. Through the open door, they witnessed a massive oak tree at the edge of the property split and crash to the ground, taking down the power lines with it. The distant lights of the farmhouse flickered and went out. "Well, that decides it," Daniel sighed. "Power's out, but the house has a fireplace and plenty of candles. You'll be more comfortable there than in this drafty old barn." Alexandra hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you. I truly appreciate it." As they prepared to make a dash to the house, Daniel noticed her glancing again at Willow. "Your horse seems anxious," she commented. "Would you like me to help you settle her before we go?" Daniel was surprised by the offer. Most city people in Alexandra, despite her riding boots, had the polished look of someone more at home in urban settings. Wouldn't know the first thing about calming a horse during a storm. "You know horses?" he asked. A small smile touched her lips. "A little," she replied, with what seemed like deliberate understatement. Curious now, Daniel watched as Alexandra approached Willow's stall. The mare, normally wary of strangers, pricked her ears forward with interest. Alexandra spoke softly in a language Daniel didn't recognize, perhaps French or Italian, and extended her hand palm up. To his astonishment, Willow immediately stretched her neck to sniff the offered hand, then allowed Alexandra to stroke her face. "She's beautiful," Alexandra said, expertly running her hands along the mare's neck in a way that visibly calmed the animal. "Quarter horse? She has excellent conformation, despite her age. She's the last of our breeding stock," Daniel admitted, increasingly intrigued by his mysterious visitor. "You clearly know more than a little about horses." Alexandra turned to him with an enigmatic smile. "Let's just say we understand each other." She gave Willow a final pat. "She'll be fine now." The storm frightened her, but she settled. Indeed, the mare did seem remarkably calm now, munching contentedly on her hay despite the continuing thunder. Daniel shook his head in amazement. "Well, I'm impressed. Now let's get you out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia." They made a mad dash through the downpour to the farmhouse, Alexandra clutching her duffel bag. The house was dark and cooling quickly, without electricity. Daniel lit several oil lamps and candles, their warm glow creating dancing shadows on the walls. "The bathroom's upstairs. First door on the right," he told her. "There are clean towels in the cabinet. I'll get the fireplace going." "Thank you," Alexandra said, disappearing up the stairs with her bag. While she changed, Daniel built a fire in the living room fireplace, grateful that he'd stocked up on firewood. He also changed into dry clothes and put a kettle of water on the propane stove, one of the few appliances that would work without electricity. When Alexandra returned, she had changed into dry jeans and a simple gray sweater. With her dark hair combed back from her face, Daniel could better appreciate her features: high cheekbones, a straight nose, and those remarkably intense dark eyes. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but there was something compelling about her face, an intelligence and determination that commanded attention. "I made tea," Daniel offered, gesturing to the 2 mugs on the coffee table. "It's nothing fancy, but it'll warm you up." "Perfect," she said, settling into the armchair nearest the fire and accepting the mug. "Your home is lovely, Mr. Hayes." Daniel glanced around the modest living room with its worn furniture and faded curtains. The compliment seemed misplaced, but she appeared sincere. "It's seen better days," he admitted. "Been in my family for 3 generations. "You can tell it has history," Alexandra replied, sipping her tea. "Those are often the best homes." The conversation flowed surprisingly easily as the storm continued to rage outside. Daniel learned that Alexandra was indeed involved with horses. She mentioned working with various breeding operations, without elaborating much. She asked intelligent questions about his farm, listening with genuine interest as he described its history and the challenges of recent years. "The drought's been hard on everyone around here," Daniel explained. "Used to be we had 20 horses at any given time, quality quarter horses for working ranches, some for show. My father built a solid reputation. Hayes Quarter Horses," Alexandra said thoughtfully. "The name does sound familiar." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Really? We were known regionally, but never that big." She shrugged. "I've been in the industry a long time. You pick up names." As the evening wore on, Daniel found himself enjoying the unexpected company. It had been a long time since he'd had a visitor, even longer since he'd had a real conversation with someone who understood horses and farm life. Most of his social interactions these days were limited to transactions at the hardware store, or brief exchanges with neighbors equally beaten down by economic hardship. Alexandra was different, engaged, knowledgeable, and surprisingly easy to talk to, despite her somewhat reserved manner. She didn't volunteer much about herself, deftly turning questions back to him or to general topics, but Daniel didn't mind. There was something refreshing about her presence, like a breeze from a different world. By 10 o'clock, It became clear that the storm wasn't letting up. Roads would be flooded, possibly with downed trees, like the one that had taken out his power lines. "I'm afraid you're stuck here for the night," Daniel said apologetically. "The guest room isn't much, but it's clean. I can put fresh sheets on the bed." Alexandra looked momentarily uncomfortable. "I hate to impose further. It's no imposition," Daniel assured her. "Can't send you out in this, and I wouldn't want anyone driving these back roads in the dark even in good weather. They can be treacherous if you don't know them." She smiled gratefully. "Then I accept. Thank you." After preparing the guest room, Daniel bid his unexpected visitor good night. As he lay in bed listening to the continuing storm, he found himself puzzling over Alexandra Belmont. There was more to her than she was letting on. Her knowledge of horses was clearly professional, not casual, and her expensive SUV and subtle accent suggested a life very different from the struggling farmers of Cedar Ridge. But whatever her story, her presence had briefly lifted the gloom that had settled over him in recent months. For one evening, he'd been distracted from his mounting debts and uncertain future. Tomorrow would bring a return to reality, but for now, Daniel was simply grateful for the respite. Morning arrived with surprising brightness, the storm having moved on during the night, leaving puddles and debris as evidence of its fury. Daniel rose early as usual, and was surprised to find Alexandra already awake, standing on the front porch with a mug of coffee, surveying the farm in the clear morning light. "Hope you don't mind," she said, indicating the coffee. "I found the percolator." "Not at all," Daniel replied, joining her with his own mug. "You're an early riser." "Habit," she explained. "In my line of work, mornings start before dawn." Together they assessed the storm damage. Besides the fallen oak tree, a section of fencing was down, and the barn roof had sprung a new leak. But overall, the farm had weathered the storm reasonably well. "I should check on Willow," Daniel said after finishing his coffee. "Mind if I join you?" Alexandra asked. "I'd like to see her in proper light." They walked to the barn together, navigating around puddles and fallen branches. Inside, Willow greeted them with a soft nicker, clearly pleased to see visitors after the frightening night. Alexandra approached the mare with the same confidence she'd shown the previous evening, and again, Willow responded to her with unusual trust. Daniel watched, fascinated, as his visitor ran expert hands over the horse, checking her legs and examining her teeth with the practiced eye of a veterinarian or professional trainer. "She's in excellent condition for her age," Alexandra commented. "You've taken very good care of her." "She was my father's pride and joy," Daniel explained. "Sired some of our best foals." Alexandra nodded thoughtfully, then glanced around the mostly empty barn. "And this was full once?" 12 stalls, usually all occupied. "Had a good operation going." Daniel couldn't keep the hint of bitterness from his voice. Then the drought came. Feed prices doubled, and horse market collapsed simultaneously. Perfect storm. Alexandra was silent for a moment, her dark eyes scanning the barn's interior with an intensity that suggested she was seeing more than just an old building. "The structure is solid," she said finally. "Good bones. And your land, how many acres do you have?" "About 300, though only 80 are suitable for horses. The rest is wooded or too rocky." 80 acres is substantial," she remarked, "plus a sound barn and established water sources." "That's not nothing, Mr. Hayes." Daniel frowned slightly, wondering at her interest. "It's Daniel, please. And yes, it would be a decent setup if I had the capital to rebuild. But as it stands..." He shrugged, the gesture conveying his financial reality more clearly than words. Alexandra turned to face him directly. "What if you did have the capital?" The question caught him off guard. "Excuse me?" "I'm being hypothetical," she said smoothly. "If you had the resources, would you want to rebuild your horse operation, or would you prefer to sell and pursue something else?" Daniel leaned against a stall door, considering the unexpected question. "I've never wanted to do anything but this," he admitted. "It's in my blood. My grandfather started with 2 mares and built something that mattered. My father expanded it. I was supposed to take it further, not watch it die." He paused, realizing he'd revealed more of his feelings than he'd intended. But that's life, I suppose. Sometimes you don't get a choice. Alexandra nodded, her expression unreadable. Sometimes you don't, she agreed. And sometimes choices appear when you least expect them. She checked her watch. I should get going soon. I need to check road conditions and reschedule my appointment. As they walked back to the house, Daniel noticed that Alexandra kept glancing back at the barn and scanning the property with that same assessing gaze. At the house, she gathered her things quickly and prepared to leave. I can't thank you enough for your hospitality, she said, extending her hand. You took in a stranger during a storm without hesitation. That's rare these days. Daniel shook her hand, surprised again by the strength in her grip. Anyone would have done the same. We both know that's not true, she replied with a small smile. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to him. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call. Daniel accepted the card automatically, glancing down at it. The card was elegant in its simplicity, thick cream-colored stock, with only a name, phone number, and a small embossed logo of a horse's head. Alexandra Belmont, Belmont Equestrian. When he looked up, questions forming on his lips, Alexandra was already heading to her SUV. He followed her out, still looking at the card. What exactly do you do at Belmont Equestrian? He called after her. Alexandra paused by her vehicle, the morning sun highlighting the determination in her face. I find potential and develop it, she answered cryptically. Thank you again, Daniel. You may be hearing from me sooner than you think. With that, she climbed into her SUV and drove away, leaving Daniel standing in his driveway, the business card still in his hand, wondering about the strange encounter and what she had meant by her parting words. 3 days passed, and life returned to its difficult routine. The power was restored, Daniel repaired the fence damaged in the storm, and his financial worries resumed their constant presence in his mind. The encounter with Alexandra Belmont began to seem like a strange dream, a brief interlude from reality. On the 4th day after the storm, Daniel returned from his shift at the hardware store to find a different luxury vehicle parked in his driveway, a silver Mercedes sedan that gleamed in the late afternoon sun. As he pulled up, Alexandra emerged from the car, dressed more formally than before in tailored pants and a blazer, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Ms. Belmont? He greeted her, surprised. I wasn't expecting to see you again. I said you might hear from me sooner than you thought, she reminded him with that same enigmatic smile. Do you have time for a conversation, Daniel? A real one, about business? Intrigued and slightly wary, Daniel nodded. Sure, come in. Inside the farmhouse, Alexandra declined his offer of coffee and instead got directly to the point, her manner more businesslike than during her previous visit. I wasn't entirely forthcoming about who I am when we met, she began, sitting at his kitchen table. The storm was unexpected, but I was in this area specifically to look at your property. Daniel frowned. My property? It's not for sale. Not officially, Alexandra agreed. But it's no secret locally that you're facing financial difficulties. Word travels in agricultural communities. Her direct approach was startling but not unkind. I didn't plan to reveal myself quite so dramatically, but the storm changed that. Reveal yourself? Daniel echoed, increasingly confused. Who exactly are you, Ms. Belmont? Alexandra Belmont, founder and owner of Belmont Equestrian, she stated simply. We're one of the largest warm-blood breeding operations in Europe, with facilities in France and Germany. We specialize in dressage and jumping prospects, primarily Hanoverians, and sell Francais. Daniel stared at her. The name suddenly clicked in his memory. Belmont was indeed famous in international horse breeding circles, though far removed from his world of quarter horses and working stock. Why would someone like you be interested in my rundown farm? He asked bluntly. Alexandra leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. Because I'm expanding to North America, and I need the right property with the right potential partner. She gestured toward the window, indicating the land beyond. Your farm has excellent bones, Daniel. The soil quality, water sources, proximity to several major equestrian centers, while still being affordable, it's an ideal location. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. But it's nothing special. There are bigger, better-equipped farms in this region that are probably for sale. I've seen 12 properties in 3 states over the past month, Alexandra replied firmly. Yours has what I'm looking for. And after meeting you, seeing how you care for that mare despite your circumstances, observing your knowledge and commitment, I believe you might be the right partner as well. The word partner caught Daniel's attention. Partner? Not just buying me out? Alexandra nodded. That's my proposal. I need someone who knows the local agricultural scene, who understands American regulations and business practices, who has roots here, someone who cares about building something lasting. She paused. I'm offering you a partnership. My capital and international connections, your local knowledge and land. We would transform this place into Belmont Hayes Equestrian, the North American branch of my operation. Daniel felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath him. It was too sudden, too vast a change to process. I don't know the first thing about warm bloods or dressage horses, he protested. My experience is with quarter horses for working ranches. You know horses, Alexandra countered. The specifics can be learned. I have trainers and handlers who would relocate here. You would learn from them, and they would learn from you about operating in this region. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I've prepared a preliminary business proposal. The numbers are substantial, Daniel. She slid the folder across the table. With hesitant hands, Daniel opened it and began to scan the documents inside. His eyes widened as he took in the figures. The initial investment Alexandra was proposing would not only clear all his debts, but would transform the property into a state-of-the-art breeding facility. The projected revenue, if her estimates were accurate, would exceed his farm's best years many times over. This is, he began, struggling to find words. Life-changing, Alexandra supplied calmly. Yes, for both of us. I need this expansion to happen, and you need a way forward that doesn't involve losing your family legacy. Daniel closed the folder, his mind racing. Why me? Why not just buy a turnkey operation from someone already in the dressage world? Alexandra's expression softened slightly. Because authenticity matters in this business. Your farm has history, roots. It has weathered storms, literally and figuratively. That resonates with clients looking for stability and tradition. She paused. And frankly, I trust my instincts about people. You impressed me, Daniel Hayes. It was too much to process at once. Daniel stood and walked to the window, looking out at the land that had been in his family for generations. Land that he had been slowly losing, watching it slip away with each missed mortgage payment. I need time to think, he said finally. This isn't a decision I can make on the spot. Alexandra nodded, seemingly unsurprised. Of course. Take a week. Look through everything in that folder. Research my operation. I encourage it. Call some of the references I've included. She rose from the table. I'm staying at the Cedar Ridge Inn. You can reach me there, or on my cell when you're ready to talk further. As she prepared to leave, Alexandra paused at the door. One more thing, Daniel. This offer won't be on the table indefinitely. I need to establish the North American operation within the next 6 months to meet breeding schedules. If not here, it will have to be elsewhere. After she left, Daniel sat at his kitchen table for a long time. The folder opened before him, its contents simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The practical side of him knew this was an opportunity beyond anything he could have hoped for, a way to save not just the land, but the legacy his grandfather and father had built. The proud, independent farmer in him, however, balked at the idea of becoming someone else's partner, of changing the essential nature of Hayes Farm. Over the next few days, Daniel did exactly as Alexandra had suggested. He researched Belmont Equestrian extensively, finding impressive coverage in international equestrian magazines and numerous championship results for horses bearing the Belmont prefix. Alexandra Belmont herself appeared in several articles, described as a visionary breeder and one of the most influential figures in European sport horse breeding. He called 2 of the references she had provided: an Olympic-level dressage trainer in Florida and a successful breeder in Kentucky. Both spoke of Alexandra in glowing terms, emphasizing her integrity in business dealings and her extraordinary eye for equine potential. Daniel also sought advice from the one person in Cedar Ridge he truly trusted, his father's old friend, Dr. James Warren, the local veterinarian who had treated the Hayes horses for decades. "Belmont?" James had exclaimed when Daniel mentioned the name during their meeting at the veterinarian's office. "Alexandra Belmont came to see you? She's equestrian royalty, Daniel. What she's done with bloodlines that everyone else had ridden off is nothing short of miraculous." "So, you think her offer is legitimate?" Daniel asked, still struggling to believe that someone of Alexandra's stature would be interested in his modest operation. James leaned back in his office chair, his white eyebrows raised in surprise. "If Alexandra Belmont wants to partner with you, it's not only legitimate, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. That woman doesn't make mistakes about horses or business." By the 6th day after Alexandra's visit, Daniel had made his decision. He called the number on her business card, and they arranged to meet at his farm the following morning. Alexandra arrived precisely on time, dressed more casually than during her business proposal visit, but still with that air of quiet confidence that seemed to define her. They walked the property together, discussing potential improvements and renovations that would be necessary to transform the farm into a warm-blood breeding facility. The main barn would need to be expanded, Alexandra noted as they stood inside the structure. "We'd need at least 20 stalls of larger dimensions, a proper breeding area, and better ventilation systems." Daniel nodded, beginning to see the potential through her eyes. The north field would be good for expansion. Soil's better there, and it's protected from the worst of the winter winds. "Exactly what I was thinking," Alexandra agreed, looking pleased. "We'd also need to construct an indoor arena for year-round training and evaluation of the young stock." As they continued their tour, Daniel found himself increasingly engaged with the vision Alexandra was describing. Her knowledge was impressive, and she listened with genuine interest to his suggestions about the property's unique characteristics. When they finally returned to the house, Daniel was ready to give his answer. "Before I tell you my decision," he began as they sat at his kitchen table, "I need to know something. Why North America? Why now? You're already successful in Europe." Alexandra considered the question carefully before answering. "Several reasons. The North American market for quality sport horses is growing rapidly, but still underserved compared to Europe. Transportation costs and quarantine requirements make importing expensive and complicated. Having a breeding operation here makes strategic sense." She paused, then continued with a hint of something more personal in her voice. "But it's more than just business. I built Belmont for nothing after leaving my family's failing farm in France at 18. I know what it means to watch something you love slip away, Daniel. This expansion isn't just about profit, it's about creating something meaningful in a new place, establishing roots that go deeper than just business." Her unexpected vulnerability struck a chord with Daniel. Despite her success and confident exterior, Alexandra Belmont understood loss and struggle. Perhaps that explained why she had seen potential in his failing farm when others would have dismissed it. "I accept your offer," he said simply. "I want to partner with you." Relief and pleasure crossed Alexandra's face. "You won't regret it," she promised, extending her hand across the table. As they shook hands, sealing their agreement, Daniel felt an unfamiliar sensation, hope, mixed with the exhilarating fear of stepping into something entirely new. He had been prepared to lose everything. Instead, he was about to embark on rebuilding it into something he could never have imagined. The transformation of Hayes Farm into Belmont Hayes Equestrian began almost immediately. Within 2 weeks of their agreement, architects and contractors descended on the property, measuring and planning the extensive renovations. Alexandra had not exaggerated about the speed or scale of the changes to come. The legal details were handled by Alexandra's efficient team of attorneys, who drew up partnership agreements that were fair and transparent. Daniel retained ownership of the land while granting Belmont E.F. Equestrian a long-term operational lease and profit-sharing arrangement. His mortgage was paid in full as part of the initial investment, lifting the weight of debt that had been crushing him for years. As autumn deepened toward winter, the first major construction began, a state-of-the-art barn with 24 spacious stalls, built adjacent to the original structure, which would be renovated rather than replaced, at Daniel's request. "The old barn has history," he had explained to Alexandra. My grandfather built parts of it with his own hands. I'd like to preserve that if we can." Alexandra had agreed readily. History matters in this business. Clients like to see that connection to the past, that continuity. By December, the basic structure of the new barn was complete, and work began on the indoor arena. Alexandra divided her time between Cedar Ridge and her European operations, staying for weeks at a time to oversee the developments, then returning to France to handle matters there. During her absences, Daniel found himself missing their conversations. Alexandra had a way of challenging his thinking while respecting his experience, pushing him to see beyond the limitations he had accepted for so long. When she was present, the farm hummed with purpose and direction. As the physical transformation of the property progressed, Daniel immersed himself in learning everything he could about warm-blood breeding and the international sport horse market. Alexandra provided books, videos, and arranged for him to visit several established operations in Kentucky and Florida. He was a quick study, his lifetime of horse experience providing a solid foundation for this specialized knowledge. By early spring, the main construction was complete, and the farm was ready for its new purpose. The newly renovated property was impressively expanded barn, with its spacious, airy stalls, the indoor arena with perfect footing for developing young horses, new paddocks with safe, attractive fencing, and a renovated farmhouse that maintained its character while featuring modern updates to the kitchen and bathrooms. Throughout the process, Alexandra had been conscientious about preserving the elements of the farm that mattered to Daniel, including setting aside a special paddock and comfortable stall for Willow, who observed all the changes with equine curiosity. "She's the farm matriarch," Alexandra had declared. "Every breeding operation needs a wise old mare to teach the youngsters manners." In April, the first Belmont horses arrived from Europe. 3 pregnant broodmares, carefully selected by Alexandra to form the foundation of their North American breeding program, accompanied by 2 of her most trusted handlers, Marie and Laurent, who would stay permanently to help run the operation. The arrival of these magnificent animals marked the true beginning of Belmont Hayes Equestrian. Daniel watched in awe as the horses were unloaded from the specialized transport. Tall, elegant animals with powerful movement and intelligent eyes, so different from the sturdy quarter horses he had raised all his life. "They're spectacular," he murmured to Alexandra, who stood beside him supervising the unloading process. "Wait until you see their foals," she replied, her eyes bright with excitement. "That's when the real magic happens." The pregnant mares settled into their new home with surprising ease. Marie and Laurent, the French handlers who had accompanied them, moved into the renovated guesthouse on the property, bringing European expertise and work ethic to complement Daniel's practical American approach. Over the next few weeks, Daniel worked closely with the handlers, learning their methods and sharing his own knowledge of the local conditions. There were occasional tensions as different horse management philosophies collided, but Alexandra mediated skillfully, helping the team find the best approaches that combined European tradition with American practicality. "In France, we would never" became a common phrase from Laurent, usually followed by Daniel's equally common response. "Well, in Cedar Ridge, we have to consider." Despite these cultural adjustments, a mutual respect developed. The French handlers appreciated Daniel's deep knowledge of the land and its particular challenges, while Daniel admired their meticulous attention to the horse's development and well-being. Alexandra divided her time between the farm and business trips to equestrian centers around North America, establishing connections and promoting their upcoming breeding program. Her reputation preceded her, generating significant interest in what Belmont Hayes would produce. "People are already asking about foals that haven't even been born yet," she told Daniel one evening as they reviewed the farm's progress in their office in the renovated farmhouse. "We have waiting lists for breeding contracts with mares we haven't even purchased." Daniel shook his head in amazement. "It's a different world from quarter horses. We were lucky to sell yearlings for a few thousand. You're talking 5 or 6 figures for unborn foals." Alexandra nodded. "Quality commands its price, and our first crop of American-born foals will set the standard for everything that follows." She looked at him seriously. "That's why these next few months are crucial. We're establishing our reputation in this market." In May, the first of the imported mares gave birth a leggy colt with his mother's elegant head and his sire's powerful hindquarters. Alexandra was present for the birth, having flown in from New York specifically for the occasion. Daniel watched in admiration as she assessed the newborn with an expert eye, checking his conformation and movement even in these first hours of life. "He's excellent," she pronounced, her smile revealing genuine pleasure. "Look at the angle of his shoulder, the length of his cannon bones. He'll be athletic." Daniel could see it too, now that he knew what to look for. Months of intense study and Alexandra's patient teaching had honed his eye for the qualities prized in dressage and jumping prospects. "They named the colt Belmont Hayes Prometheus because he's carrying the fire of our new beginning," Alexandra explained. The birth announcement, featuring professional photographs of the striking colt, was shared on the farm's newly established social media accounts. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Equestrian publications requested interviews, and potential clients began scheduling visits to see the new operation firsthand. By midsummer, all 3 imported mares had delivered healthy foals, and Alexandra had arranged for the purchase of 4 additional broodmares, and at least 2 proven stallions to stand at the farm for the upcoming breeding season. The operation was growing faster than either of them had initially planned, driven by unexpected demand and Alexandra's willingness to accelerate their investment when opportunity presented itself. The transformation of Daniel's life was as dramatic as the transformation of his property. Where once he had worked alone, struggling to maintain a failing operation, he now oversaw a team of 6 employees. Where once he had worried about making minimum payments on his mortgage, he now managed a substantial operating budget with Alexandra's guidance. Most significantly, where once he had seen only an inevitable decline, he now participated in building something with a future. The daily work was harder in many ways. Longer hours, more responsibilities, a steeper learning curve than he had faced in years, but it was deeply satisfying in a way his previous struggle had not been. Not everything proceeded smoothly, of course. Cedar Ridge was a small, traditional farming community, and the sudden transformation of the Hayes property into an elite, European-style equestrian center generated mixed reactions. Some neighbors welcomed the investment in job creation, others viewed the changes with suspicion, considering it an unwelcome intrusion of foreign influence. The local feed store owner, Bill Jenkins, captured this ambivalence during one of Daniel's supply runs. "Quite a change out of your place," Bill remarked, as he loaded bags of specialized feed into Daniel's new truck, another sign of the farm's changed circumstances. "Hardly recognize it with all those fancy new buildings. Your dad would be surprised." There was a note in Bill's voice that made Daniel pause. "Surprised good or surprised bad?" Bill shrugged. "Just different, I guess. Hayes Farm was always about good solid stock for working folks. Now it's all high-dollar show horses for rich people." He glanced at Daniel. "No offense meant, just observation." "None taken," Daniel replied, though the comment stunned more than he wanted to admit. "But you know, we were going under the old way. Bank would have taken it all." "True enough," Bill conceded. "Better to see it changing than gone, I suppose." Such conversations made Daniel question whether he had compromised too much in partnering with Alexandra, whether the farm's new direction betrayed its heritage rather than extending it. He found himself defensive about these changes when speaking with old friends and neighbors, yet simultaneously proud when discussing the farm's progress with their new equestrian contacts. Alexandra noticed his conflicted feelings during one of their regular strategy meetings. "You seem distracted," she observed, as they reviewed plans for expanding their breeding program in the coming year. "Is something wrong?" Daniel hesitated, then shared the conversation with Bill and his own mixed feelings about the farm's transformation. Alexandra listened thoughtfully, then set aside the breeding charts they had been discussing. "Come with me," she said, standing and gesturing toward the door. Curious, Daniel followed her outside. Instead of heading toward the new facilities, Alexandra led him to the old barn, which had been renovated but maintained its original character. Inside, Willow dozed in her comfortable stall, while the walls displayed preserved pieces of the farm's history. Old photographs of his grandfather and father with their quarter horses, Hayes Farm trophies from Regional B. shows, and the hand-carved wooden sign that had once hung at the entrance to the property. "I had Laurent hang these last week," Alexandra explained, gesturing to the historical display. "This is the heritage center of our operation, Daniel. Every visitor will start their tour here, learning about Hayes Farm before they see Belmont Hayes Equestrian." Daniel stared at the carefully arranged memorabilia, touched by her thoughtfulness and understanding of what troubled him. "Your grandfather and father built something significant," Alexandra continued. "We're not erasing that we're building on it. Different horses, yes, but the same commitment to quality and integrity." She met his eyes directly. "The methods evolve, but the values remain." Her words resonated with Daniel. He realized that he had been thinking of the partnership as a departure from his family's legacy rather than its continuation in a new form. Alexandra had seen this more clearly than he had. "Thank you," he said simply. "I needed that reminder." Alexandra smiled. "Partners help each other see what they might miss alone. That's the point." As autumn approached, bringing with it the first anniversary of the storm that had brought Alexandra to his door, Daniel reflected on the whirlwind year that had transformed his life and property. The foals were developing beautifully, the breeding program for the next season was fully booked, and their reputation in the equestrian community was growing steadily. More personally, his relationship with Alexandra had evolved from cautious business partners to genuine friends. They still disagreed regularly, his practical, hands-on approach sometimes clashing with her global, strategic vision. But these disagreements invariably led to better solutions than either would have reached alone. He had also grown increasingly aware of Alexandra as more than just a business partner. Her passion for horses, her unexpected flashes of humor, her willingness to get her hands dirty despite her sophisticated background, all these qualities had gradually shifted his perception of her from intimidating equestrian mogul to fascinating woman. On the anniversary of the storm, Alexandra suggested they celebrate the successful first year of their partnership with dinner at the farmhouse. She arrived with an excellent bottle of French wine and ingredients to cook what she called a proper meal, not your American takeout. Daniel watched with amusement as she took command of his kitchen, preparing a traditional French dish while explaining each step. There was something appealing about seeing this normally composed, businesslike woman enthusiastically describing the importance of proper seasoning and the crime of overcooking garlic. "My mother insisted that knowing how to cook was as important as knowing how to ride," Alexandra explained as she expertly chopped herbs. "She said both were about feel and timing. Impossible to teach from books alone." "Your mother sounds wise," Daniel commented, leaning against the counter and sipping the wine Alexandra had poured. "You don't talk about your family much." A shadow crossed Alexandra's face briefly. "There's not much to tell. My parents had a small horse farm in Normandy, beautiful land, but they struggled financially. My father was a traditionalist, resistant to changing with the market." She focused intently on stirring the sauce. "When I suggested new approaches, bringing in different bloodlines, modernizing our breeding program, he refused. Said I was too young, too female, too influenced by American business ideas." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Too female?" Alexandra shrugged, but he could see the old hurt beneath her casual gesture. "Rural France can be very traditional. As the only daughter, I was expected to marry a neighboring farmer and support his ambitions, not pursue my own." "So you left," Daniel surmised. "At 18, she confirmed. "I apprenticed at major breeding farms across Europe, learning everything I could. Worked my way up from mucking stalls to managing breeding programs. Saved every euro." Her expression softened with reminiscence. "When I was 26, I scraped together enough for a down payment on a small property and one exceptional mare, the foundation of Belmont Equestrian." "And your parents?" "My father never forgave what he saw as betrayal. My mother," Alexandra paused. "She sent me that mare, secretly. Said she believed in my vision even if she couldn't openly support it." She looked up from her cooking, meeting Daniel's eyes. "The farm failed 2 years after I left. Bank took it, just as yours nearly did. My father blamed me. Said my departure cursed them." "That's not fair," Daniel protested. "No," Alexandra agreed. But grief and pride rarely are fair. He died, still believing I had abandoned our heritage, rather than finding a new way to honor it. She tasted the sauce, added a pinch of salt. That's why this partnership matters to me, Daniel. You had the courage and wisdom to adapt, to see that preserving legacy sometimes means reimagining it. The revelation of her personal history placed their partnership in a new light. Alexandra's interest in his struggling farm hadn't been merely strategic, it had been emotional as well. A chance to rewrite her own family's story with a different ending. Their dinner that evening was more than a business celebration. It marked a deepening of their connection, an acknowledgement of the personal investment they both had in Belmont Hayes, equestrian. As they shared the excellent meal and the remainder of the wine, their conversation ranged beyond horses and business, to books, travel, and their differing perspectives on dozens of topics. By the time Alexandra prepared to leave, well past midnight, something had shifted between them. Daniel walked her to her car, the autumn night cool and clear, stars per burr, brilliant above the farm. "Thank you for dinner," he said, "and for everything this past year. I was drowning, and you threw me a lifeline." Alexandra shook her head. "It was never charity, Daniel. I saw potential in the farm, and in you. I still do." Her dark eyes held his in the starlight. "In fact, I see more possibility now than I did a year ago." There was something in her voice, a warmth that went beyond business appreciation. Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken as they stood close in the darkness. The only sounds, the distant nickering of horses and the rustle of autumn leaves. Acting on impulse, he leaned down and kissed her. For a breathless moment, he feared he had misinterpreted her meaning, jeopardizing everything they had built. Then Alexandra responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest as she returned the kiss with unexpected intensity. When they finally separated, both seemed equally surprised by what had happened. "I didn't plan that," Daniel admitted, slightly dazed. Alexandra laughed softly. "I didn't either, though I can't say I haven't thought about it." "Really?" He couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. "Is it so shocking?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability beneath her confident tone. "You're intelligent, principled, and surprisingly adaptable for someone so rooted in raw tradition. Not to mention," she gestured vaguely at him, "the whole rugged farmer aesthetic works for you." Daniel chuckled, relieved by her lightness. "And here I thought you only valued my local knowledge and conveniently located property." "Those too," Alexandra acknowledged with a smile. Then, more seriously, "But we should be careful, Daniel. Our partnership is still young, the business still establishing itself. Complications now could risk everything we've built." He nodded, appreciating her practicality even as he felt a pull toward exploring this unexpected development. "You're right. The farm comes first." "For now," she agreed, her expression softening. "But perhaps we can revisit this complication when things are more stable." As Alexandra drove away, Daniel stood in the driveway, looking out over the transformed property, new buildings gleaming in the moonlight alongside the historic structures that had sheltered generations of Hayes horses. Like the farm itself, his life had become a blend of tradition and unexpected new directions, the familiar and the challenging, the planned and the serendipitous. Winter brought new challenges and achievements to Belmont Hayes equestrian. Their first American-bred foals continued to develop impressively, with Prometheus in particular drawing attention from trainers and potential buyers. Alexandra made the decision to retain him as their first homebred stallion prospect, a vote of confidence in their program that Daniel found deeply satisfying. The indoor arena proved its worth during the cold months, providing space for the handling and early training of the youngsters and attracting local riders who paid to use the premium facility when it wasn't needed for farm operations. This additional revenue stream had been Alexandra's idea, and while Daniel had initially hesitated, concerned about opening their specialized facility to the community, he now appreciated both the income and the goodwill it generated. Their personal relationship remained in a careful holding pattern. The kiss they had shared on the anniversary night was not repeated, but something had undeniably changed between them. There were moments of lingering eye contact, conversations that flowed from business to personal topics with increasing ease, and a growing comfort in each other's presence that went beyond professional camaraderie. Alexandra continued to divide her time between Cedar Ridge and Europe, but her stays at the farm grew longer, while her absences shortened. She rented a small house in town rather than continuing to stay at the local inn, a sign of her increasing commitment to being present for the operation sow. By spring, as they prepared for their second foaling season, the business had stabilized enough that Daniel found himself thinking more frequently about Alexandra's words on that autumn night, about revisiting the complication when the time was right. He wasn't sure how to broach the subject, aware of the potential risks, but increasingly certain that his feelings for her went well beyond business admiration or physical attraction. The decision was taken out of his hands when Alexandra returned from a 2-week trip to France with unexpected news. She arrived at the farm directly from the airport, finding Daniel in the main barn supervising the training of one of their yearlings. "We need to talk," she said without preamble, her expression troubled. They retreated to the office, where Alexandra paced the small space instead of taking her usual seat. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, concern growing. "Problem with the European operations?" "No, the business is fine," she assured him. "It's my mother. She's ill, heart problems that she's apparently been hiding from me for months. The doctors are recommending immediate surgery and extended recovery care." "I'm so sorry," Daniel said sincerely. "Is there anything I can do?" Alexandra stopped pacing and faced him directly. "That's what I need to discuss." "She has no one else, Daniel. My father is gone, no siblings, just distant cousins she barely speaks to. I need to be there for her recovery, which could take months." The implication was clear. "You'll need to return to France indefinitely," he concluded, feeling a hollow sensation in his chest. "Yes." Alexandra's voice was steady, but he could see the conflict in her eyes. "I've arranged for additional staff from our French operation to support Leroy and Marie here, and I'll handle as much as I can remotely, but, she took a deep breath. "You'll need to take full operational control of Belmont Hayes in my absence." Daniel absorbed this. He had grown increasingly confident in managing many aspects of the business, but Alexandra's vision and connections had remained central to their success. "I'll do whatever's needed," he promised. "Your mother should be your priority right now." Relief crossed Alexandra's face. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." She hesitated, then added softly, "There's something else, Daniel. Something I haven't told you." He waited, sensing her internal struggle. "My mother's farm, the one I grew up on. The one the bank took, it's for sale again." Alexandra's voice held a mix of emotions: longing, uncertainty, determination. "I've made an offer to buy it back. If my mother recovers well, I want to re-establish it as part of Belmont Equestrian, a European sister operation to what we've built here." Daniel felt his heart sink further. What had seemed like a temporary absence now sounded potentially permanent. "You'd split your time between both operations?" Alexandra nodded. "That was my thinking. But it would mean more time in France, at least initially. The property has been neglected for years, and rebuilding would require substantial attention." She watched his face carefully. "What do you think?" What could he say? That he'd grown to count on her presence? That the prospect of running Belmont Hayes without her felt like returning to the empty barn of 2 years ago, despite all the new life they'd brought to it? That he had begun to hope for something between them that transcended business? Instead, he offered what she needed: support. "I think it's fitting," he said, forcing a smile. "Your mother gave you your start with that mare. Rebuilding her farm honors that." Alexandra studied him for a long moment. "Is that all you have to say?" she asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. "What else would you want me to say?" She took a step closer. "Perhaps that you'll miss me? That what we've started building here on, I don't mean the farm, matters to you?" Her directness caught him off guard. "Of course I'll miss you," he admitted. "And yes, what's between us matters. But your family needs you. I understand priorities." Alexandra's expression softened. "My mother's illness has clarified something for me, Daniel. Life doesn't always give us second chances. With the farm, she's given me one. I don't want to miss another. Before he could process her meaning, she closed the remaining distance between them. I'm not choosing between the farm in France and what we've built here, she said firmly. I'm finding a way to honor both, just as I'm not choosing between being your business partner and being more. She reached for his hand. Unless you want me to choose. Unless you prefer to keep things strictly professional. The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities and risks. Daniel had spent 2 years fighting to save his family's legacy, only to discover that legacy was about more than land and buildings. It was about connections, continuity, creating something that would outlast him. I don't want strictly professional, he answered finally. I want you in whatever capacity makes this work. If that means managing things here while you rebuild in France, then supporting both operations between us, that's what we'll do. Relief and something warmer filled Alexandra's eyes. Partners find solutions, she said, echoing words she had spoken to him during their first year working together. In business and beyond. When she left for France 2 days later, their goodbye was no longer constrained by professional boundaries. Daniel kissed her at the airport, with the promise that they would find their way forward together, across distance and cultural differences, combining tradition and innovation just as they had with the farm. The following months were challenging, with Daniel taking on responsibilities he had previously left to Alexandra while she divided her attention between her mother's recovery and the acquisition of the Normandy property. They spoke daily by video call, discussing business matters and personal ones with equal openness. By midsummer, her mother had recovered enough to move into the renovated farmhouse on the newly purchased Normandy property. Alexandra's plan was taking shape: parallel operations on 2 continents, preserving her family's heritage while building something new with Daniel. In August, as Belmont Hayes equestrians celebrated the success of their first crop of foals in a major evaluation event, Alexandra surprised Daniel by arriving unannounced. She watched proudly as Prometheus, now a striking yearling, earned the highest scores of the day from the international judges. Later, as they walked the property together in the evening light, Alexandra shared her vision for their future, both professional and personal. The Normandy property needs another year of development, she explained. After that, I think we can establish a rotation: 3 months there, 6 months here, with shorter trips as needed. Technology makes remote management possible for either of us. She glanced at him. But only if that arrangement works for you. Daniel considered it. 2 years ago, he couldn't have imagined himself as part of an international operation, let alone in a relationship with someone who divided her life between continents. But Alexandra had expanded his vision of what was possible, just as he had helped ground her connection to the land and its traditions. It works, he assured her. As long as we're building this together, the logistics are just details to solve. Alexandra smiled, that same confident smile that had intrigued him when she first arrived during the storm. My mother asked about you, she mentioned casually. She wants to meet the American farmer who helped her stubborn daughter find balance between innovation and tradition. I'd like to meet her too, Daniel replied. Maybe this winter, when things slow down here? I'd like that. Alexandra stopped walking and turned to face him. The setting sun cast a golden light across the property they had transformed together, illuminating both the historic structures and the new facilities that represented their shared vision. You know, 2 years ago, I came here looking for land with potential. I found much more than that. Daniel took her hand, still amazed by the unlikely journey that had brought them together. A storm brought you to my door, and you changed everything, he said. Some might call that luck. I don't believe in luck, Alexandra replied, her dark eyes reflecting the sunset. I believe in recognizing potential when you see it in property, in horses, in partners, Daniel finished, drawing her closer. As they stood together surveying what they had built and what they would continue to build on 2 continents, Daniel reflected on how completely his life had changed since that stormy night. He had gone from a struggling farmer facing foreclosure to the co-owner of an international breeding operation. From a man resigned to loss to one embracing new possibilities. From solitary caretaker of fading traditions to partner in creating new ones. The journey hadn't been easy, and challenges certainly lay ahead. Their operation would face competition, market fluctuations, the unpredictable nature of working with living creatures. Their personal relationship would navigate cultural differences, distance, and the inevitable conflicts that arise between two strong-willed, passionate people. But as Alexandra leaned against him, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder as they watched the sun set over Belmont Hayes Equestrian, Daniel felt a deep certainty that they would weather whatever storms came their way. Together. "I'm offering you $1 million for your farm, Mr. Hayes," the elegant woman had said that day in his kitchen, when he still saw her as a mysterious stranger with unlikely plans. Now, as Alexandra turned her face up to his with a smile that promised both challenge and partnership, Daniel knew that what she had really offered him was something far more valuable, a future he could never have imagined, built on the foundations of his past, but reaching toward horizons he never knew existed.